All right, let's see if we got some questions today before we wrap this thing up. Ty wants to know, well, and let's just characterize it this way. I'll just read what he said because it's not a question per se. Let's just say the NFL loses all the appeals for Sunday Ticket. Here's the question. How much money should each anticipate to get per season paid to them? I understand there will be tons of fees included, but just a rough estimate, how much can I expect to get per season paid? I've tried to do the rough math on this. $14.1 billion is what the NFL is looking at. You've got prejudgment interest going back to 2015, post-judgment interest from the day the verdict was entered, attorney's fees, which means every minute that was spent by the plaintiff's lawyers. And if they're smart, they kept track of everything they did. Because that, and in a fee shifting case, that's what we call it, where attorney's fees are available as a measure of damages, you need to keep track of all the time you spent doing everything, because then you put it together, just like it's a bill you would submit to the NFL, because that's what it is. Here's the bill for all the time we spent. So you had to pay your lawyers, now you got to pay our lawyers on top of the $14.1 billion. That all gets put in a big pot. And what the plaintiff's lawyers will eventually propose is that they get a third of it. I'm assuming that's the fee agreement they had with the class representatives. And that's standard. And look, before you do the math and say, hey, man, that's a lot of money for these lawyers, think about the risk they took. Think about the uncertainty. Think about all the time they spent chasing the dragon and slaying the dragon. You slay the dragon, you're entitled to the gold coins and other loot that the dragon has amassed over the years by pillaging towns all throughout the countryside. That's part of the deal. And class actions, said this before, but let me reiterate it. This is why companies hate them. If you're just one person and you go into a lawyer and say, you know, I think the NFL has screwed me for the last 10 years. I think the NFL has created an antitrust violation by the way that it sells Sunday Ticket and that it overprices Sunday Ticket so that I wouldn't have bought it and that I would instead watch CBS and Fox and prop up their ratings. And the lawyer says, oh, you may have something here. How much were you charged? Well, I probably, I paid $400 a year and I shouldn't have had to pay anything. So 400 times 10, $4,000. Is it $4,000? Yeah, it's $4,000. Okay, so you want me to file a lawsuit, chase the dragon, slay the dragon, and if I do that, you get $4,000. No, thank you. Now, look, it's a fee-shifting case, so in theory, you could get paid for all your effort, but you still have to win. To entice someone to take this on, what you need to be able to do is take that relatively small indignity visited upon one person and multiply it by everyone who got screwed by this. 2.4 million. So that's why the class action becomes effective. That's why it's more than appropriate for the lawyers to get a third. So let's just say at the end of the day, and let's say it's 15 billion when it's time to cut it up. 5 billion goes to the lawyers. 10 billion is left over. And the commercial class is just one part of this. Let's say there's ultimately 10 billion for 2.4 million plaintiffs. What does that work out to be? 10 divided by 2.4. I got that all wrong. I gotta work a little more on the math. Math is very hard for me. I still think that the rough number, when the dust settles, my gut tells me if you got it every year, you're going to be somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000. That's going to be your check from the NFL, which is far more than what we usually get in most class actions. So I still have to work on the math a little bit more, and there's a lot to be determined, but it's not going to be what so many of us, and part of the reason why we think that the check that you get at the end of the day for a class action is hardly anything, it's part of the PR campaign by the companies that hate class actions. Speaking of PR campaigns too, I didn't mention this earlier. One of the things I've noticed in reading the class action transcript, and it's so predictable, the pandering that the NFL has done to the jury throughout the case. It's all about the fans. It's all about the fans. This is about the fans. We only care about the fans. The fans, the fans, the fans, the fans, the fans. Everything is justified by saying this is for the fans. And when you try to pander to someone at some point, they get offended because they think that you think they're stupid. And it's hard to come to a conclusion as to if that happened or when that happened. We know it did happen because of the verdict. But you need to kind of be in the room to sense how the jury's reacting to this. But it was the narrative that was created by the lawyers and grafted onto the witnesses. It's all about the fans. It's all about the fans. It's not about the money. It's all about the fans. To the point where Jerry Jones said, I don't know that I care that much about the money. It's all about the fans. It's all about the fans. It's all about the fans. Why? Because the jury is made up of fans. And they want to hide their antitrust violation behind this idea of all we're trying to do is make it better for the fans. Well, you know how you make it better for the fans? You make all of the games available. We're going to talk more about that on a different day. But the NFL spent a lot of time saying there's no way that would have worked. There's no way we could have had in-market games on CBS and Fox and out-of-market games on other networks. It never would have worked. It never would have worked. It would have been chaos. And as the plaintiffs have said in one of their briefs, chaos is one of the things that someone who violated the antitrust laws points to justify their violation of the antitrust laws. Well, it would have been chaos if we would have done it any other way. Well, maybe it wouldn't have been. And maybe it would have been more lucrative for the NFL. But the way it should have been, all those games, you think about it. The NFL is the only thing that attracts, other than the Olympics. The Olympics are doing pretty well so far. But year in and year out, the NFL is the only thing that attracts a massive audience live to watch that game as it's happening. And if you put every game that happens at 1 o'clock Eastern on a Sunday on TV, regular TV that everyone has access to, either through cable, satellite, or a streaming service, CBS, Fox, ABC, NBC, ESPN, ESPN2, FS1, USA, TNT, TBS. You got 10 different channels. CBS and Fox have the in-market games. All the other ones have the out-of-market games. I think the NFL makes more money. And if you're truly focused on what's good for fans, having all the games on your TV that you can flip from one channel to the next and see any of them with no additional cost, that's what's good for the fans. And I mention that and I harp on that because that might be the end result. Apart from any money you get, whether you paid for Sunday ticket or you didn't, the end result could be all these games are going to be on your TV service that you're already paying for. And all those channels that you wouldn't be watching on a Sunday because you're watching CBS and Fox and the in-market games, you can just turn the dial. Not that there's a dial anymore. There's nothing to turn. You can just click the button and you can pick the cable channel that has the out-of-market game that you'd rather watch at no extra charge to you. That's how it should be. That would be the absence of an antitrust violation. And maybe that's what we're going to get. Okay. This comes from Calvin. I'm sure the Jets will be hesitant to trade for a disgruntled player in the future, but does the Haason Reddick situation make teams hesitant to deal with his agent in the future? No. This isn't about the agent. This is about the Jets trading for a guy that wanted a new contract without getting him a new contract on the way through the door. And I know that they've put out to media that will just take their version and run with it and not question it, the idea that, well, we kind of had an understanding or this. No, look. You find a guy on another team that wants a new contract and you trade for him. You better be damn sure when you trade for him, you get the deal done. Reddick's holding out because they didn't get the deal done. It's their own damn fault. And other teams aren't going to look at that and say, well, the agent's been a jerk. They're going to look at it and say, Jets being the Jets. And it goes all the way up to ownership. The dysfunction of a team is set in motion by ownership. And it manifests itself in a bunch of different ways. And one way the dysfunction of the Jets has manifested itself this year, they traded for a guy who wanted a new contract without signing him to a new contract. They never should have done it. That's where the owner needs to step in and say, no, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. The guy wants a new contract. We're going to trade for him. He's still going to want a new contract. Unless we're going to give it to him, he might not show up. Then what are we going to do? Either he takes the offer that we make on a new contract or we don't trade for him. We find somebody else to come in and play the position of edge rusher. Jay Quintana, what's a successful season for the Chargers? Well, it's winning the Super Bowl, of course. Isn't that what every team says? We want to win the Super Bowl. Look, a successful season for the Chargers is making the playoffs and winning a playoff game. That's a great start for Jim Harbaugh. I think they're going to give the Chiefs hell. And Chiefs fans get so upset. Just like, oh, we've won the last 2 Super Bowls. You know that means we're going to win this one and the next one and the next one, and no one's ever going to challenge us again. We're going to rule the league for as long as Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback. I mean, let's be realistic. The Chargers, during their semi-dysfunctional years, have been competitive with the Chiefs. Back to 2018, Chargers were in position to be the 1 seed. They blew it on a Saturday night against the Ravens. The Chiefs came in, took the division, took the 1 seed. Would have been the Chargers. Remember the Chargers had that great win on a Thursday night in Kansas City to put them in the driver's seat? Jim Harbaugh's not going to have to do much. And Jim Harbaugh's got that knack of just getting guys ready to go out and play and give their all. I think the Chargers are going to be a problem this year. I think he's going to get the most out of Justin Herbert. He's going to get the most out of the rest of the roster. He's going to find a way to fix some of the dysfunction that has manifested itself over the years, and the Chargers are going to be better. So I think a success for them, make it to the playoffs and win a game. But I think they might even do more than that. We'll do our predictions once we get closer to the start of the season. I like to delay it as long as possible, but I'm probably going to call for the Chargers. Not that anybody cares. That's the thing about doing these predictions. I mean, if you're wrong, they'll make fun of you. If you're right, you got lucky. But I don't think it's going out on a thin, creaky limb to say the Chargers will make it to the playoffs this year, because I kind of think that the presence of Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert, that alone tells me pretty good chance they're going to make it to the postseason. Hello from London, says Dan Mushman. Do you think the pending damages for the Sunday ticket trial may have an effect on any future franchise sale? The per-team potential liability would be a significant percentage of the value of a franchise. May it already have delayed a franchise being put up for sale? I think what it might do, it might cause some owners to be far more inclined to take advantage of the coming ability to sell a piece of the team to a private equity fund. What better way to raise $440 million than to give up a piece of the team in exchange for the money that you would take and use to pay off the Sunday ticket judgment, to pay off your portion of it, which is going to be $440 million if 14.1 stands. So look, it becomes something that you need to take into account if you're going to buy a team. I wonder how much Josh Harris took it into account when he bought the Commanders. I wonder how much the Walton Penner Group took it into account when they bought the Broncos. I wonder how seriously the NFL took the Sunday ticket litigation. That's part of the due diligence process. When you are buying a company, you go in and you study anything and everything that could be a current or future liability. And certain decisions are made and certain measures are taken. Money can be put in escrow pending the outcome of this, that, or the other thing. I wonder how seriously anyone took this Sunday ticket case, because at the end of the day, Harris and the Walton Penner Group are on the hook for these past antitrust violations. And yes, future owners are going to be on the hook as well, and it will be a factor. But one way that teams can get their $440 million, sell a chunk of the team to private equity. And one of my immediate reactions to the verdict was, this could drive the values down. If you've got a bunch of teams looking to sell a piece to a private equity fund, if you're the private equity fund, it's a buyer's market all of a sudden. So you dictate the terms and you say what you're going to pay, because you're in a position where the teams are competing with each other to get you to be the one to come in and give them the lifeline and give them the $440 million they need to pay off this judgment if and when it comes to it. There's still so much. And look, the NFL will exhaust every avenue for appeal. The plaintiffs will exhaust it. If they end up on the losing side at some point, if this pendulum swings the other way, there's too much at issue here. This is going to be part of our NFL experience, our shared NFL, good, bad, or otherwise, for the next 3 or 4 years. And that gives the teams time to figure out what the hell they're going to do if and when the reckoning arrives. Jordan Davey, teams don't want to go 5 years fully guaranteed for quarterbacks because of Deshaun Watson, but with recent 4-year extensions for Tua and Love, could this set up Dak Prescott to get at least 4 years fully guaranteed if he hits the open market with the leverage he has? Currently, there's a grievance pending against the league as it relates to the reluctance to give fully guaranteed contracts to certain players, specifically quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson, one of the examples. That trial has already started. It's going to pick up later in the summer. I mention it because you can talk about leverage, but then you look at what happens if a team gives a player too much. What happened to the Browns? The Haslam's got the cold shoulder. The Haslam's got frowned upon by the other members of Club Oligarch. You don't want to be the one that the other owners are upset with. You don't want to be the pariah in your private club. It's collusion. It's improper, but it happens. So we saw Kirk Cousins get to the market this year. We saw him get $100 million fully guaranteed, 2 years fully guaranteed, plus another $10 million that bleeds into year 3. Now, we've seen with Love and Tua, 3 years that are guaranteed as a practical matter, plus some money that bleeds into year 4. Could Dak get 4 years fully guaranteed? The risk is if you guess wrong, you're paying a lot of money to a guy that isn't helping you win. And it makes it harder to pay the guys on the team who are helping you win. Think of how good the Browns could be right now if they'd kept the money and the draft picks. That's the one part of the Deshaun Watson situation that gets overlooked. Forget about the 5-year fully guaranteed contract. Look at everything they gave up. 3 first-round picks, 3 mid-round picks, 6 players that you could get for very low cost that would be a key part of the nucleus now and moving into the future. Even if you only hit on half of them, it's 3 great players that you would be paying not much to. So, separate and apart from whether or not anyone is going to give a 5-year fully guaranteed contract to a quarterback is the question of whether the Browns picked the wrong guy to give it to. That's the real issue. It blew up in their faces. It's going to cause those who look down upon the Haslams to snicker at their misfortune. That's what you get. That's karma. That's collusion karma. How dare you not collude? Look what happened to you when you refused to collude. You spent your money fully guaranteed on the wrong guy. And this is the year, really. I think this is it. Year 3. It's going to break one way or the other. Watson is either going to justify it or it's going to be obvious. With 2 years left, the Browns got to figure out what the hell they're going to do. They owe him $92 million after this year, fully guaranteed. What are they going to do? They're going to bite the bullet and move on? Or are they going to keep trying to will this guy into becoming the guy that he was 2020 and prior to that? Rama Aravind, why don't teams move all the cap dollars 10 or 20 years down the road? A super rich owner could build a dream team for 1 or 2 years to win a Super Bowl. There's only so far you can kick the can under the salary cap. There's only so many years you can spread out guaranteed payments that are made now. And we see it mainly with quarterbacks. There's that big bill to be paid by way of cap dollars once the quarterback is gone because, and you look at Josh Allen as a great example of it. Once they signed him to a new deal, his cap numbers the first 3 years were relatively low, less than $20 million each year. And now they start going up. And there's that big number on the back end that's only going to get bigger and bigger if they keep him around. That's what they do. But look, if teams really wanted to go all in, they could. And this goes back to the Cowboys, but I think other teams are the same way. There isn't a clear connection between spending and on-field success. And this is one of the things that's kind of bubbled up through the Sunday ticket trial. Revenue sharing and salary cap, the correlation might not be as strong as people think it is between that and competitive balance. I mean, look at how good the Patriots have been. Look at how bad the bad teams have been. Even with all the advantages for bad teams, it's almost impossible to really turn it around. The Bengals are in the process of doing it with Joe Burrow. But I think at the end of the day, and I hate to say this because it makes people jaded about the sport, and we want people to love football, and I love football, but I also accept what it ultimately is. It's a business. It's a for-profit enterprise. And for Jerry Jones to get on the witness stand at the Sunday ticket trial and say he's never taken a profit from the Cowboys, which I guess is supportable if you dig into the financial statements. He's paid himself about $250,000 a year, and he's never taken a profit out of the Cowboys. Most would find that hard to believe. But secondly, when he says, I don't know that I care that much about money, I think for most of us, we look at that and say, come on. This is fundamentally a business that is trying to make as much money as possible. Look at how much money is coming in. That's not accidental. That's engineered. That's deliberate. They don't want us to think of it that way. This goes back to the framing of the theme that was presented at the Sunday Ticket trial. It's about the fans, not the money, the money, the money. But we all know it's about the money, the money, the money. And we can compartmentalize that. I think we can. We can enjoy the sport for what it is, and we can acknowledge that the owners are all horribly greedy and it's all about money, and anything they say to the contrary is a friggin' lie. I think we can do that. We can spin those two plates. We can support our favorite team. We can enjoy watching the games, but we can also recognize that it is a greed-driven enterprise, and they are greedy, and the greed blinds them to things like the antitrust violation that was staring them right in the face, that they've ignored. And now that they're going to have to pay the money, what are they going to do? They're going to look for others to foist it upon, even though it's their own fault, blinded by their own greed, trying to get more and more and more, trying to get to $25 billion in revenue by 2027. That's what happens along the way. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.